right, good day to all. Sam here with you. Happy Friday. And if it's Friday, that means we're doing Bitcoin. So I've got here Bitcoin to the dollar. This is on Bitstamp. And I'm looking at a 3-hour chart now. So this is my primary account, and I am an unabashed Bitcoin bull. So I recognize my bullish bias and try to be conscious of that as I'm doing any analysis. But you know, if we look here at just simplifies. Let me take this off for a second. Just if we try and be simple about it, and we just work from a dominant swing here to a swing high to swing low, and we see the 50, the double top potentially that we run into here at the 50. Well, if that's going to hold, and I promise you algo is sold there and then sold again, the target down here is at 3,200. You know, just because there is a target doesn't mean that it must get there, so we can't ignore it. I do not think Bitcoin is going to 3,200. Now, just because I think it doesn't mean it can't happen, but I think that that's unlikely. So despite the fact that we have algos that have sold here with a target down here, I think that's less likely than what I'm proposing here, that we in the bullish count, and that we have a swing low to this double top here. We have the potential for this to hold. So let's look at that. I'm not ignoring the bearish count. That seems less likely to me. So if we're going to look for a way to see this play out with a bullish outcome here, so this would be potentially a 1-2. So you know, there's been a lot of modification here, because there was the potential here when we were first looking at this that we had a 1-2. Pardon me, that we had 1-2. This was the 3-4. We came up for a 5. You know, that at this point looks less likely to me. I think it's more likely here that we have that we're putting in an ABC and that we're putting in a second here. So the double top into the B, it's not quite as high. So essentially you've got a flat there coming down. So you'd have 335 coming down. And you know, for a second wave, you'd expect it to be between the 50 and the 618. So if I pull up to that high here, get that right on here. So we've come to the 50, we've gotten through it, right? And we're going to dig a little closer on that. So let's go down to the hourly. Not surprising here, as I was talking to some members this morning, would not be surprised to see another move down here to test this low. Right, it's very common. The market will put it, there'll be a potential low, but it needs to get tested here. So because we come up a little short of the 618, I would not be surprised if there's one more push down to test that low and potentially get it down to the 618, where we know there will be algorithmic buying there. But, you know, this could be the low. If there's one more push down, then we have a little correction underway here. We might modify our count here slightly. But it's there, so could this play? So if I put the wave on this, could we have an ABC here? Well, it's not unreasonable. There's nothing about it that would be, you know, where we'd be really stretching the bounds of possibility for that count to play. There's nothing unusual about it. I mean, it's a deep B wave, but you know, it happens all the time. So this is a very, very reasonable count and a reasonable bias to have if you're a Bitcoin bull. It's not unreasonable. There's not great market geometry there, but it's certainly, if you step back on it. So if we go back to let's go to a 4-hour, and we look at this now. Here I am in log scale. Right. So if we look at that and you just kind of step back, does that seem unreasonable as a 1-2? It really doesn't. It really doesn't. So I would love it to come down here one more time and tap that low. Now, one thing that's always a good idea is to look left. So you look at this and you go, well, why does it stop there? I mean, could it be this? Could it be this kind of a thing? Like we ran into some prior resistance there. It's damn near to the tick. So just a little cliff here, a little shelf that was established there, some prior resistance, potentially offering some support there. So if we just look at that, I mean, that's not unreasonable as a 1-2. It's really not. So where would that? So the bullish count then would imply, if we're going to get a third, that we're off to challenge the old highs here, because this would be the 1618. We know if we're going to come down here, that negative 100 is going to be very close to the 1618 highest probability zone for a third. So that can play. Now, if we break the 65 here, we know the algos will be on the other side, so that's a concern. Now, we could go down, from an Elliott perspective, we could go down as deep as the 786. We could come down here. Wouldn't invalidate the count. I'm going to take the wave off just to declutter the chart a little bit. That's not unreasonable. It could go down that low for a 2. Right, we had a very shallow 2 here. Maybe we're going to get a deeper 2 here. But my anticipation is that there's one more push down. We challenge the 618. Maybe we get into the golden pocket. And there should be some algorithmic buying there. And if it's strong enough and we don't have any bearish news to come out of that's not a reasonable expectation to have. Now, we're not going to go straight. We'd anticipate the subdivision, but what we want to see now, ideally, I'd like to see another test of the low. It doesn't have to break the low, but at least another test of it. If we come down to the 618, all the better, because it just adds confidence to the buy there with that tap of the 618. We know there's going to be algos buying there, just as there were algos selling here at the 50 on this double top. So that's kind of what we're looking for, kind of eyeballing it, waiting to see, can we get that kind of reaction? Can we get a pop down here, and do we get the reaction you'd like to see? So let's go down. I'm going to go down to the 45-minute. Well, does that lay out for us in terms of the subdivision we'd want to see here? Take this off. Potentially, it's there. Now, what's a point of caution though is this is just a straight rip down, just straight rip. So is there subdivision? Yes, except the retracements have been very shallow. So I don't love this AB because of the shallowness of the B. That's uncharacteristic. B wave typically will retrace more deeply as a push to challenge those highs. Can you get that to fit? Yeah, I don't love it. Then we get a very shallow 1, 2 as well. So short 1, 2, 3, it plays, it's technical, it's there. So if we measure it, if indeed that is our B, and that's my 1, and that's my 2 there. Well, here's the 2, 6, 1, 8. So it's a candidate. It's a candidate as an extreme for a 3 relative to the 1. That's a reasonable 4. So if I look at my 2. Get it right on there. For my 4, we come a couple of wicks past the 50, so essentially a double top here at the 50. First algo target, reaction. Second, are we going all the way down? There's the potential that this gets relabeled, is that this is the 4, so that would put this as the 3, and there's one more push down here, so we would likely change this. This would go to the 1. This would go to the 2. That's a candidate. Depending on what happens down there, that has better symmetry here. It's still a little squirrely, the abruptness of it, but at least we get a slightly deeper, and we get the subdivision we'd like to see here in the second. So now if you pull from that proposed, if that ends up being our second, down to our 3, well, it's a little shy of the 50, so that's more in line with where you'd expect a 4. If there's one more push down, we'll note down here, here's the algo target off of this. If that's a front run on the 50, that's potentially a candidate there. So this would put our algo target down here right in sync with the 65. So if there's a front run on the 65, if we get into the golden zone, this is a candidate. It's a contender. That could be what we see. So like I said, this doesn't yet give us any impulsive characteristic. We've had the reaction here. There's a possibility. So if I open that up a little bit more, this may be an ABC into the 4, which means we're going to look for subdivision down here to finish this. If we're heading back down here, that certainly is not unreasonable. So potentially we've just put in the 1. Yeah, come here. Potentially we've got the 1, 2 that's in. There's the 1, 2 going in. We'd look for a 3, 4, 5. Would bring it right down. So wave on that. You can kind of see what we'd be looking for. If that's a 1, anticipate the 2, down for the 3, maybe a bump at the 618. If we're going to get into the golden pocket, so there's a potential roadmap for that would make sense. And that would create high confidence here. in terms of the opportunity to be a buyer in the golden zone. It would be, that's certainly something I would be taking a strong, hard look at as a buy there, because you can buy it in. So let's say we will split the difference here. You've got this potential, and there's no need to go. So even if you just went on the other side of the algo target at 23.6, allowing for a little spike through the 6.5. If you're allowing for it, you still have got a really, really reasonable risk reward there. If you're going to get any kind of a bounce out of that, even just to get back to the prior 1-2. So what do you get there? That's 9.79 to 1. Now, granted, there will absolutely be resistance. If it breaks the 65, now I'm hypothetical here, if we break this just a little bit, right here, here's the first area of major resistance, because here's the 50 coming back up. So remember, if the 65 breaks, algos will flip. Then they're going to be sellers there. Just because they're sellers doesn't mean that it must follow that path. Come here. And we're going to go down. Well, I can't get that hot. There we go. So that does not mean we must go down there and make that target, right? We'll put it down here. But it's a candidate. It's certainly a candidate. There will be, yet again, there'll be support. So let's take that off. So if we get that, this creates this target. But additionally, if we get this reaction here, we're going to get this buying support as we come down here. If that's a potential 1, then comes the 2. So the 50 will be there. So you'll have a fib fight, right, from that 50. So here will be the buy zone. So if you want to be conservative and see what kind of reaction we get here, here's the next bullish trade. Knowing you're going to hit resistance here, if you get that retrace, that's the potential for a 1-2. That way you're not trying to pick the low. You're not understanding that if we break the 65, you're going to expect resistance there, because the algos will flip. They'll take the next 50 and they'll sell it, looking for that as their target. But there will be this group here that will be buying into that 50 to that 618 with this as their target. This is the negative 618. Here's the negative 100. So potentially now you're coming out of this with a 5-wave structure. All right, so that would potentially set you up for that kind of action. That's how you come out of it. Right, knowing that this is going to be we're going to have all of this resistance along the way. We know it's there. We got to get through it. So buyers have to stay in control. That's just the reality of how the market's going to move. So first, we got to come down here and get a good pivot to work with. Right now, it's not really clean. We're in between the 50 and the 618. We do have this prior support, that shelf that I wicked off that I was showing you over. Well, I have to go as I showed you, that little shelf potentially offering the support. Well, that's gotten it to the tick. So if we dig back in here, can we get this one more time down here? I would certainly be paying attention down here. I certainly would like to see it hold the 65. It still sets you up here, but I wouldn't mind if it stayed above the 65, because just then you're not going to have the immediate resistance on the way back up. We shall see where we get it, what happens. But right now, so let me take that off. All we know is we've had a test. We've had one, almost a double bottom here. So do we get one more test down? That's what we're kind of waiting to see. I wouldn't be a seller here. I would certainly consider being a buyer down here, and probably will be. So we'll see how that unfolds. You can see here now it just shapes a little bit better. We have better symmetry for that if we're going to come down here and finish in that 5th. So, the alternative, if going into the weekend saying, all right, well, that's great, Sam, I know you're a bull, but, what if we break? Well, now we got to go back. So I'd go back out to a 3-hour. What's the alternative? You certainly, you would have to revert back to, so if I take all of this off and we say maybe that's not happening, right? So what's the bearish count that we ought to be prepared for? Is it there? Well, again, acknowledging my bullish bias. You would just start with, as you would, okay, where are the algorithms? What are they doing? So if we look at this pull where we started here, you potentially have a 5-wave structure here. So I suppose you could make a case that you have an A, B, C, or you might have you might have, let's look at this. See if we can do the bearish case on the fly. So you potentially could have, I'd have it this way, ABC into that. You could have a DE potentially into a DE. So that would look like this. It's possible. I would actually have it like this. Into the DE, that's a contender. You'd have that 3 wave here into that. So you'd be in. So the worst case for that would be, now given that we put in that double top and we get that kind of action here. So then I would likely draw it like this. Right. So this creates the break. So you had a triangle like this. So with this kind of pattern here. All right, so that's a contender. If that's the case, then you have, that's very bearish. So likely you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a contender. That would be the very bearish case, and this. I don't think that's likely to happen, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have that. If you're going to split your screen here, keep a bullish case and a bearish case, and anticipate the sort of the dark side of this move is such a rip, and we're struggling to get good subdivision in there. One of the things that you'll notice here, so if I take this off, and this is just ways that you can look for, and remember, it's always about solving the puzzle. So I'm going to take the wave off of that. And you're just looking for, what could the algorithms be doing? Where is there a relationship maybe that I haven't thought about? Well, one thing that I notice here is you see how abruptly we went down here in the V bottom. Well, this looks very similar to me. This straight, that's just fear is what we have. Fear, greed, fear, greed, fear. So if I look at the length of this, and I go, well, that's kind of interesting. How does that relate to what's happened over here? And if I measure that, pretty close. So now if I look at that and I think, okay, so if I'm going from that low down here up to potentially this as a high, do you see? Well, now I got to wiggle it because you can't see it. So if I put that right on there, note that the 100% is literally on top of the 618. So just looking for that relationship. So even if I were to draw it, as I showed this to some members this morning, if I draw this and I just take that low down there, and then I clone that, and I do the same thing over here, right? You can see, if I can do it without changing the length of it, literally right on top of it. Right on top of it. So there's interesting some symmetry here. 100% of this rip down projected from this is, I guess it's easier to do it with the APP. So you can see here this 100%. So it's literally on top of the 618. So a candidate for likely support, just based off of that rip up here, rip almost identical in distance. If we're going to come to that 618, again, this sets us up. So potentially we start moving in 5. That's certainly a candidate. Can't ignore it. So the real key is going to be, what's the reaction here? Do we come back down one more time and test that low? Do we get the reaction? And then it's a question of, do we get a higher high? Or pardon me, do we get a higher low? So if we come down here, can we get that? And we can get that higher low and then move towards a higher high. If we can get this, then it gets more encouraging. We know we're going to have that resistance here. Right here's the negative 23.6 right at the negative, right at the 618. So it just becomes a question of, where are we going to see the reaction? So you don't know. That's the thing. You're not going to know. But that doesn't mean not to trade it. By the time you know, the money's been made. So you have to take some gamble there. There has to be some risk. There is no risk-free trading. Certainly with Elliott Wave is always just a potential roadmap. So if we're going to get the reaction down here that we're looking for, and we get the pop off of it, the real tell comes on the next retracement. Do we hold? Because if we don't hold and we start doing this, then that looks more like a 1, 2, and we start going this way, looking for that as the 3. Do you see what I'm suggesting there. If it comes the other direction, so if we see this kind of reaction, we come up here as I drew it a little bit before. So if we come down, let's say we go down to that 618, and we come into the zone here where we're anticipating the 2 or the reaction or just the algo resistance. If we move off of that towards this target, right? So we have this would be the fib fight. Here's where the buy is the 50 if we come down. If we pivot there, we're heading towards this one. If we come down here and we break and we get through this, then we're heading for this one. So you're going to have an algo fight, a fib fight with those targets in mind. So I'll just draw it again so you can see it. So if that's our low and that's our high. Did I do that? No, I'm sorry, I did it this way. If I go from the low down here, right, there's our negative 23. I gotta wiggle it so you can see it. You see that green line right there up at the negative 618? So it's either here's the decision point here. So first we got to see what happens at the 618 if we're going to come back down and test it. Do we get through resistance? If we don't, if we come back, can we get a higher low followed by a higher high? If we can get that, then here's the potential 4-5. Can we get through that? Here's the negative 23 right here, which would be the algo target from this if it holds. If we get up here and we bounce here and we're coming back down, then you create the scenario for this. And this would be the bearish case. Then we've got this going down. If we start seeing, if we're going down for 5. So do you see, there's no way to know. No way to know. You know, so there's multiple counts. I've looked at this 5 different ways. There, you know, and I've got some, you know, very smart people that, you know, are members and some of my admins that, you know, we're all looking at this going, what's the count we're not thinking of? What could it be that we're not seeing? And that's where I started looking for swing relationships. Where, you know, that's kind of what will often happen in the market. You'll find it after the fact. Can you get a jump on it? Can you find the puzzle pieces that would suggest that we've got potentially a technical pivot here? Then, you know, that's all you can do is look for a reaction. You can anticipate the algos kicking in there, but you can anticipate algos kicking in here to sell it. Who wins? You know, that's a fight between bulls and bears. Who's going to maintain control? You're not going to know until you see reactions here. But to trade it, well, you got to put some capital at risk. No way around it. If you're a bull, as I am, I will be a buyer here. I'll be a buyer here. I'll look to add here. Right? Because then my risk is so small, relatively speaking, if I'm just on the other side of the 65. If we break here, I will not be selling it. I almost never sell Bitcoin. I wouldn't be looking for that 4-5 heading down. I just wouldn't. But so for me, I'm looking for a reaction here. I do want to see that come down one more time and test the low, test the 618. I'd like to see the symmetry here with the 100% from this swing. Do we get a reaction? I'm anticipating we will. First retrace, that's the place to add. So this is not a go heavy here. That's a toe in the water, little appetizer. Here comes, that could be, you know, entree. Here comes dessert into the 5th. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there.